Hello, and welcome back to the Obojima Podcast. My name is Jeremiah, and I am joined with Ari and Adam. And we are the writers of Obojima, and you are joining us for our weekly writers meeting where we sit down and we talk D&D. We talk D&D, we talk Obojima, we talk a whole bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. And this time around, we are jumping into the topic of monsters as puzzles, or the idea that combat does not need to conclude in the creature dying a glorious death, but instead solved through some sort of problem solution. I guess the quickest explanation of this would be there's a monster with a giant red button on its back, and if you press the giant red button, the monster stops moving or powers down or whatever, right? So the conversation I want to talk about today is how to implement those ideas, how to come up with some of those ideas, talk about what makes those interesting and fun, and then specifically how we can tie it to the world of Obojima. And so, I think this topic is talked about, often enough, but I don't know that anyone, at least I haven't seen, a real in-depth dive on how it would work in a campaign. Oftentimes when I do see it, it is in reference to constructs or things like that. There's a lot of that. But how does
shoot the gem out of the eye,
exactly.
Forehead of the golem? Very
video gamey, right? Yep. There's like a mechanical, this action turns the thing off. But I think there's more nuance to it. I think it can be more related to some of the role-playing aspects of a game and maybe even tie to things you've learned previously in a campaign that now apply to this combat.
I know we've touched on this conversation, at least this topic a little bit in the past, in terms of, there are more ways to, win a combat. And I think a lot of it, as you're saying, I think comes down to the motivation of the enemy or the opponent or the monster, whatever it is. And also how dogmatic they are about achieving those goals, especially when faced with the violence, the threat of violence.
Yeah.
Some people are really loud about stuff until they get punched in the jaw or whatever, and then maybe they're not so excited about that anymore. And so there might be certain things where when you roll initiative, the first hit might be like, oh man, this got way out of hand kind of thing. But the motivation matters, and I think you mentioned it, like the video gamey aspect about knock the red gem out of the eye. That's one way to do it, and then we've talked about this before about monsters that want a thing, or maybe they're lashing out because something is wrong. It could be metaphysically wrong. They might be cursed or something. So if you find some way to alleviate the curse or remove it, that would end the aggression of that monster. Or if you scare them in some way, if loud noises might drive off howlers or something like that, and if you discover that, that's a way to win immediately. I think part of it, in terms of implementation, it comes down to you as a DM knowing or having that conversation about the type of campaign you want to have with the players. Because if sometimes the players, I want to stretch my combat muscles. Yeah. Great, go for it, but still making it interesting, not just necessarily reducing hit points to 0. Maybe you have to fend these monsters off for a certain amount of time while you achieve some goal. Yep. And those combat as a puzzle might be having and this is the DM having very clear goals for the combat. Like, what is your objective here? Yeah. And being clear about that. If the goal is to kill this monster, you have to slay this monster for some reason. That is an objective. But not every fight has to be slay the monsters. It has to be overcome them and neutralize the threat. And so however you achieve that neutralization, that's the puzzle. Yeah. And there doesn't have to be one solution either. Sometimes there could be multiple solutions to how you achieve that. But I think being upfront, really just philosophically being upfront with those conversations with your players about the type of game they want to play. Yeah. Players want to feel smart. And even if it's just, punch this bag of hit points to 0, they want to feel smart about how they do it using their character as a set of tools. That's what all the features of a subclass are tools about how to achieve that end. And if there are very clear objectives laid out, just ways for your players to feel smart about achieving those goals, I think is really what we're talking about.
Yeah, I remember back in the oldie days writing a series of articles or an article about this kind of thing where it was like, okay, you have, I think I used the examples of the Banshee and the Revenant. So you have a Banshee, which is a dangerous monster. You go into like a swamp and you hear a wailing, and it's like this, this elf that long ago was, turned into this crazy monster. And it's like, yeah, you could go into the swamp and you could, draw blades and fight it and smack it down and use all spells and all that. And you've killed the Banshee and you've rid the town of a monster that's, lurking in the woods. The other way would, and in this kind of philosophy that we're talking about here, is like, there might be a thing that the Banshee, there's a reason why this character was turned into a Banshee, this NPC was turned into a monster, and that if you do a little research, you realize that, long ago, centuries ago, there was this, this elven queen, and something happened that warped her soul, and then she became this monster. And if you can do the research, find out the story behind this creature, and then somehow either lay her mortal remains to rest, or you can give her proof that, you've reburied her long lost love and you gave them a proper burial, then it solves the Banshee as a monster problem, and she either evaporates or turns back into an elf, or you can, as a DM, you can do whatever kind of resolution you want, but it's the idea that you could go and fight this thing and kill it, or you could solve the story of what happened and then have this interesting outcome doesn't have to have combat. The other thing, like with a Revenant, the Revenant's like a tortured soul that wants revenge. It's like you could either kill the Revenant and stop them from doing whatever they're doing,
solved. Yeah, or
find out what their story is and then help them get revenge because they might be justified in their vengeance, or find an interesting way to solve it. So it's like, take your monster, find out like what the backstory is, and then that's an alternate solution to fighting.
And the other benefit you get from this approach, and obviously like sometimes you want to have a mix of approaches, but the other benefit you get from this approach is that you can have your party deal with monsters that would be automatically deadly to them if you're not there to fight them to the death.
Yeah.
So I can have a party of first level adventurers deal with a dragon in this way, right? Yeah. I mean, look at Lord of the Rings. Frodo's not going to defeat Sauron in a fight.
Right.
But the puzzle piece, the puzzle of this is knowing that the essence of, you have to do the research. You know that the essence of Sauron is bound up with this ring. If I destroy this ring, I defeat Sauron, right? The little hobbits from the Shire who are not adventurers have to then go and do this quest. Even Aragorn is not going to defeat Sauron. Gandalf's not going to defeat Sauron in an open fight. They have to be clever about how they do it. So there's also this kind of, that's on a campaign level as opposed to a encounter level.
Yeah.
But the same philosophy applies of just how do I deal with things that are beyond my ability to deal with. But now I have to be clever about how I go about it. Or I have to maybe use empathy on how to deal with these things. Maybe there's a reason why these monsters are attacking in some way. If there's a swarm of howlers suddenly entering the gift of Shiratashi, maybe something bigger has entered the Gale Fields and is driving these howlers out, right? So there might be things that are going on. Obviously, that's more on an adventure scale than an encounter scale. But if you were to talk about combat, there are ways you can go about dealing with understanding a Banshee or this Revenant, or if it is, a Rubble Golem, understanding what animates it and drives it to anger or rage or this kind of to destruction. Are there ways you can mitigate it, either while you are fighting it, or in lieu of fighting it, you find this way around it?
it kind of sounds like there's kind of 3 categories a DM has in their toolkit to set up a monster as a puzzle rather than a combat. And it sounds like those 3 things are the monster's motivation. So if a monster is desiring something, giving that monster the desire can solve that problem in some way. Or at least gives the player an understanding of the motivation and allows you to play with that in maybe your goal is to keep it away from this thing. Who knows? Then there's the disposition, which is something we talk about already in a different mechanic system, like how the monster is feeling in that moment. You know, I would imagine a monster lashing out that's skittish. If the ranger is able to pick up on that, might be able to make a loud noise or do something that scares them off. So working with how the monster is feeling rather than how the monster is motivated. Like if it is a creature that doesn't have strong motivations outside of survival. And then beyond that would be, maybe for more complex monsters, would be the lore of that creature in some way. The history of a monster, what makes a monster tick, why,
or the nature of it.
Nature of it in some way. So a monster having a past, scorned character that it's after, or some sort of thing that acts as, we talked about this earlier, as like a piece of a rubble golem that has a talisman slapped on it that's like a cursed talisman, and you have to shoot out the piece of rubble that has the talisman on the back. That is I guess a piece of history or a piece of lore that's attached to this creature that can act as the puzzle piece in the encounter. Is there any other categories that I'm missing here, or is this kind of what we're thinking?
Yeah, no, that feels, for all the thoughts that I've put into this, because I've made adventures where I took like 5e and comported it down into like something you would run for like kids, like 12-year-old to 14, maybe 12-year-old kids or 8-year-old kids. Because there was an adventure that I did with a graphic designer, Emmy, who worked at Wizards, and so she and I kind of collaborated to create like a kids adventure. Yeah. And so one of the things was like, well, how do you take combat and turn it into this thing? And so one of the things was just like, monsters that want something. And, I can't remember exactly what the things were, but it was sort of to the degree that there's an ogre bothering people, and but nobody's ever, given the ogre a birthday, And so if you go and bake the ogre a cake and celebrate their birthday, it's like, then they're happy, and it's like
the ogre.
You ungrump them and you make them, your friend. It's like turning monsters into friends was basically the premise of like all that kind of stuff. So, but it's like taking, I don't know, it's like, doing the research or finding out what they want, or, so I think you've hit all the correct ones, or the ones that I can't think of any others.
It also kind of sounds like maybe there's 2 different versions of monster as a puzzle here, which is the mechanical oriented version of monsters solving monster combats as a puzzle, which would be the fire elemental has a molten gem in the center of it, and it won't die until you extinguish or submerge that gem in water. It's like, okay, well, there's a clear goal. It's not smashed to pieces. It's put it in a glass jar and keep it there, or something like that, or submerge it in water or whatever. The same thing with the rubble golem, or maybe it's you have to hit the Cyclops' eye and they run off in some way. That's very mechanical oriented. And then there is the, I guess, broader scope, role-playing aspect of, in Ari's example of the Howlers running off, maybe you trying to talk to the Howlers and convince them to not raid the village, and then you gain that larger information of, there's a big monster in the Gale Fields that is causing this issue. Yeah.
And it's like, if we go and take care of the big monster, then the Howlers go back, and so we solve, we
solve that conflict.
Yeah. It makes me think of like Avatar Last Airbender, where we're going to go there again.
Get your bingo cards.
It's super sweet, yeah. Where the, Aang, you encounter this very dangerous spirit, and if you have to not make any facial expression.
Yeah.
And that's like a sort of a lore. You have to figure out the lore. There's a mechanic that's involved where you actually, whatever it is, you have to make probably a wisdom or an intellect saving throw like a number of times. And as the creature's trying to like startle you or scare you or get you to have an expression, you have to make a roll. And if you don't, you lose your face. It's like there's a horrifying, threat there.
It also doesn't result in death if you fail.
Yeah.
Right. That's what's interesting. That there's a permanent change to you as a character. You have no face.
Yeah.
But like, that's also a fascinating thing because we often think of if you fail this encounter, like for example, this is Ko the Face Stealer for you Avatar fans. If let's say if we were to play that out in a D&D setting, and you were to have, I guess, or if you're using the Avatar RPG, because they have one of those, in that encounter in D&D terms, it might be like if you fail and you lose your face, okay, now roll initiative so you can get your face back or whatever.
Yeah.
But it might just be like you've lost your face and you have to do something else to get it back. So the fail states of these encounters might not also be combat. It might just be something else. Ko might be a being that is so powerful that
like an elder
it's
spirit.
not meant to be fought. As in, like, okay, you're going to reduce this thing to 0 hit points.
Yeah.
Like, that might not be a thing. And so that's the other part of this is seeing encounters as puzzles or seeing monsters as puzzles, but it also doesn't necessarily mean that combat is always the thing that will erupt.
Right.
So I just think that's really cool.
Yeah, there's something neat with like, I like I've always liked the idea of monsters that are not supposed to be fought. They're like these, like Ko the Face Stealer, where if it does something, you're not like, I'm going to hack at you. It's like, nope, that isn't the deal here. Like, and then there's, I guess where it goes from there, like, another one could be like you're making a deal with the Archfey, and you make a bargain, and they say, well, if you do this thing for me, but the price is I want the color of your eyes or something, and it's just like, oh, okay. And the result isn't, I take damage. The result is it changes
There's a
the
permanent
appearance.
change. Yeah.
And there's something neat about that where, death is a permanent change in just like, regular combat, but having permanent change in these ways where you could like lose your face or lose your eyes or like lose the ability to dream. That doesn't mean anything mechanically in D&D, but narratively it's huge.
But it also is interesting because like death in D&D, there are ways to fix that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there's no spell that says restore color of eyes.
Yeah.
Like that's not a thing.
Yeah.
There's things like remove curse and stuff like, but if it's not, or a greater restoration, and then but that's kind of a nebulous thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, you have to, or give up certain memories. And now as a character that there's something incomplete now about you, which is great. It's going to kind of is more of a tangent, but like this is what makes interesting things that aren't necessarily the threat is death. That there are other things that you can play with. And I know some players don't like the idea that things can change about their character that they didn't invite, but me as a player, I love that because it shows my time in that world, right? Like I'm a big fan of, even if like you take a potion of healing, I still think that there should be magical scars there because you endured that, and your character is different. Your character from 1st level to 10th level should be different over that time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And you should be grizzled.
Yeah.
That's just the way I like to play, though. So that idea of change, of permanently changing, is fascinating. So if there is this creature, this spirit that is tormenting a village or doing whatever, and the expense is, let's say it is a Ko the Face Stealer type thing, is to give them their face. Give them your face. Like, that is extreme. What does that mean to you? Mm-hmm. Like, do you get someone else's? Is he trading?
You have a mask?
Face? Yeah, or do you wear a mask now?
Yeah.
Like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That tells a story. So I think things like that would be fun to come up with.
Yeah.
And I think looking at the monsters that we have, especially with spirits, you can get really go to some very interesting places because spirits, by their nature, might be driven by motivations that are very alien to mortals, things that they value, things that they covet. So I think that's great, or things that they are scared of, or can be driven off by. That's the research part of it that I think is that is great. So, for example, I know we're going to dwell on Ko the Face Stealer. If you found out that the reason Ko steals faces is because somewhere along the line, and this might be true, I don't know deep lore on Ko other than what was in the animated series. So, but let's say you discover Ko's original face, and maybe Ko lost that somewhere, and you're like, I have your original face, and like, oh my God, I'll do anything to get that. Now suddenly you've changed the power dynamic with Ko. You have this immensely powerful being that now will do anything for you. Like, that's really fascinating to discover things like that.
There could be something interesting too, like if you say this elder spirit has been bargaining for people's dreams, and so you have a whole village of people who aren't able to dream anymore, and that has some kind of ramification where people kind of start to go crazy, or they start to grow a certain kind of flower that now it's overtaking the landscape, or they're doing something weird because of their inability to dream. And you walk along and as an adventurer, and you encounter this village, and you're like, what's going on with these people? And then they start to tell you like, yeah, there's an elder spirit and it's been taking people's ability to dream. And then you're like, oh, like we've got to stop it, but we also don't want to like now join the the pod people. It's like, oh my gosh, but that it kind of sets up an adventure where you've got to basically combat a monster, but you're not, it's not just a hit points battle.
So if we were to look at the 3 categories that you laid out, and kind of, okay, let's do some examples on each of those. Like, how would you build an encounter or have a monster kind of fit into that category that was not just a beat 'em up?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're doing this as a DM, I would pick your monster, and then from there kind of decide which of the categories this monster naturally fits into. I think beasts, low intelligence creatures, will tend to lend into like simple motivations and dispositions. In that situation, and one of the things I want to talk about in general, outside of this, is on the player side. How is the DM offering hooks out for the player to connect with this type of puzzle oriented combat? And so I want to jump onto that later. But as a DM, I would start by taking my monster, the monster I'm interested in using, and then figuring out, which of these categories I'm going to jump into. I think like I was saying, beast-like monsters with low intelligence are going to land into simple motivations and just generalized feelings. And I would lean into that when your players are encountering them. I think a fun thing to do is, if the monster doesn't already have something built in, is you could build in a little lore bit that is just, based off of, I think like this is going to be weird and I might get some hate on this. Dogs don't like chocolate. Dogs get sick when they eat chocolate. Now, dogs are cute pets and everyone has them and it's all lovely. But if a dog was a vicious monster and was, attacking the fields and attacking villagers and things like that, then having that knowledge that I could utilize this tool against them to end it early. Like if I could get the chocolate in their mouth, they would, start hacking and they'd run off or something like that. I'm sorry. I was giving an example everyone would know. I would look at those types of things, like aversions to fire, aversions to certain issues. That's always something that's easy to play with and low hanging fruit, especially for those types of things. Alternatively would be the motivations. Are they hungry? What are they desiring? Why are they even attacking the party in the first place? Is it just simply that I am in the den of this creature? Well, how do you solve this problem? Well, you get out of the den. Yeah. Like this creature's not going to follow you. Like She-Ra attacks Frodo because Frodo's chilling in the wrong area. Okay? Frodo leaves the area. I don't think She-Ra's fallen. Right? Like
She-Ra?
Or what is the giant
Shelob.
Shelob. She-Ra is the
I was like,
the universe.
So, wait,
She-Ra attacks Frodo. I'm building my own canon.
I'd be like, She-Ra,
That is
totally
quite
take
a
Frodo out.
No, yeah.
The giant spider from
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings.
Sorry, I was actually
Shelob.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like
My
thinking,
brain.
I was
I
like,
got too
She-Ra
many.
can probably see invisible
I've got
people.
too many things going on. Shelob attacks Frodo because Frodo's in the domain. If Frodo leaves the domain, she doesn't follow.
Right.
Those are I mean, that's a puzzle to end combat, but not in the sense of like it is a complicated thing. Alternatively, the exact same puzzle solution, although it does end in his death, is like the Smog missing armor in the front chest, like a specific arrow. Like those are very puzzle oriented things as well. Actually, Lord of the Rings is full of great examples of this.
Because they're usually out. If on just like a straight up battle, they are outmatched most of the time.
Almost all the time. There would be in The Hobbit the trolls that are being turned to stone.
Yep.
That is a puzzle solution. So I would just start by taking whatever monster you have and sitting and thinking with them as if you wanted a solution in a puzzle to be connected to them.
Here's a question on Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
So in Fellowship of the Ring, looking at the movies, there's the cave troll fight that they have, right? When they're in Moria. There's what kills the cave troll is the shot to the throat, right? Now, is that, if they started with a shot to the throat, would they have killed it in D&D terms, or was that, in D&D terms, was that the last hit point that it had? You know what I mean?
Right.
Or would that be like, if in what we're talking about, would we say trolls have thick hide, but they're weak in the throat?
Trolls have this crazy thing where they don't like to be shot through the throat.
Yeah.
Works on orcs too.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
that's what I'm wondering. Like, obviously it's different because it's not a game.
Right.
But I'm just wondering if we were to translate that to what we're talking about,
Right.
You would know, like, the way to defeat a cave troll is get it to expose its throat and then shoot it in, right? Right. Obviously, like most people, well, again, that works generally. But D&D combat doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like vulnerable spots, usually. So how would we do that? How, like, we talked about it a little bit last night, the idea of fighting a Cyclops.
Right.
And, like, knowing how to shoot how would you do something of a vulnerable spot on a monster as something that you have to hit? How would you do that at the table?
I think there's there's a lot of options there. I think it depends on the conclusion that you're trying to get in the sense of killing the troll.
You want to kill the troll.
You want to kill the troll.
Yeah.
If it was a golem that you wanted to stop from moving and you had to shoot the gem out of its head, there's a bit of a difference, right? Like you just need to accurately hit the gem once versus... So there's a couple different ways. If it's like, and this gets into the implementation kind of side of things that I wanted to talk about, which is after you have picked the puzzle that you want to solve, how as a DM do you offer this as a story hook or a plot point or a thing that a player can notice? And I think part of that comes from players understanding that sometimes monsters are puzzles and thus they spend effort looking for those things. And then I think the other part of it is just dangling that information in front of the players as a DM.
Like part of it is knowledge that you bring to the fight.
Yep.
And the other one is knowledge you discover during the fight. Like video games do this all the time, right? We were talking about Expedition 33, how there are certain encounters where the enemies have a big glowy part.
Yeah.
Just like, that's the thing, shoot that thing, or hit that thing. And so they signal it very loudly because it's a very visual component though. Like D&D, it's very hard to have things you're supposed to care about just be something that you find. You have to basically say, and then you all notice that there's this big glowy thing embedded in the middle of their face. Like, is that important? I don't know, but I'm telling you about it. It's like, how do you tell them? How do you like list a bunch of information? And in that information are puzzle pieces to pick up.
Yep.
Right.
I know, when we used to play test way back, like playing D&D, we're like, well, we tried out hit locations and it erased everything else. And it was just like, everybody's just like focusing on headshots, You know, it was just it eliminated the rest of the game. So it's like if you have something where it's like you've got Smog's chest opening or something else, people are going to forget about just doing regular, like even if it was like you have a better chance to hit just generally, but if you want to hit the specific shot and do mega damage, but it's super hard, like let's say it's CR 17 to hit it, like their armor class goes through the roof to hit that, everybody's just going to focus on that anyway, because everybody wants to do the big kill shot, you know, it's like, or to do the thing where you hit the, you know, special thing and then, you know, the monster's defeated. So
also because why wouldn't you?
Yeah, you know, because that's the whole name of the game is you want to do the heroic thing. You know, you want to hit the cave troll in the throat, or you want to, you know, do Legolas up the Oliphant and, you know, knock it over and slide down the trunk and land and be all cool.
Everything that character does.
So it's like, yeah. So it's kind of like if that's the experience you want for the monster, like you want to have like this big monster, but at some point maybe it's a thing where if you do, like say the monster's got 100 hit points and you're like, okay, if you do 50 hit points to it, something opens up. It's like a Zelda thing. It's like, okay, now after 50 hit points, you can do the epic shot. Maybe it's something like you build in like that. Otherwise, everybody's going to ignore and just go for the you know, shooting the black arrow through Smog's heart.
I think if I were to describe how it currently functions in both the cave troll and the Smog example, Smog has 1,000 hit points, and his AC is 18. So it's easy to hit, but you're just plucking away.
Yeah.
Well, 18 is pretty high. Let's say it's 15. And then Smog's chest is a DC of 25. But specifically within Smog's chest, it is 10 hit points and it's instant kill. So if you deal 10 hit points to Smog's chest,
in one shot,
it just kills Smog. I think that's how it currently plays in the storyline of D&D. Mm-hmm. Like he is this giant meat shield of hit points, but very specifically in this extremely difficult to hit spot, if you're able to hit it, it's like a one-hit KO. I think that's how that currently operates. If you wanted to avoid that in your D&D game, I would say make the DC higher and then maybe just make the damage double potentially if you were just attempting to go purely, I'm trying to kill this thing. But I think in most circumstances, DMs are doing this puzzle operation to avoid the killing aspect of it.
Yeah.
So, you know, when it comes to that side of things, let's try to look at some examples that aren't so I'm trying to kill this thing and come up with a couple different options. But before we get into that, what I would love to kind of talk about on the player side of things, because I know that we're getting close to the end of the podcast episode and I want to discuss this, is as for a DM and both for the player, how do you dangle one, that the puzzle is even in the combat, and two, what the solution possibly could be?
I think part of it is training your players about the type of game. So I know it's not granular at a particular encounter, and I think we should talk about that. But I think if the game tells you, and if the DM and every encounter is thrown at you the answer is kill everything, then you're going to figure out in every encounter, how do I most efficiently kill this thing? If you were to find out, for example, let's say I'm going to use Princess Mononoke as an example. The beginning of that movie, there's that boar that has been turned into a demon.
Yep.
And then they discover after they kill it that, holy crap, there was a bullet in it. There's this iron ball.
Yeah.
Okay, so next time you encounter something that looks similar, you're going to say, the reason this is happening is because that there's probably an iron ball lodged in it. It was shot.
Yeah.
And so you might try to find a way to, again, this didn't work in Princess Mononoke. It just kind of sent Ashitaka on his quest. But might find a way to extract the bullet, right? This is the whole like mouse pulling the thorn out of the lion's paw or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So you might find a way to remove that. So you might discover it in the course of playing normal, classic D&D. I'm going to fight this monster, and then I discover something about the world and the nature of that type of monster. So the next time I encounter that, I'm armed with that information.
That's interesting. So I think a part of what you're suggesting is to do a little pre-planning as a DM and set the groundworks. Do some advanced storytelling. I think a way you could do this in the DM is, let's say you wanted your players to fight one of these giant boars from Princess Mononoke, and there's a metal bullet, or I guess in Obojima's terms, maybe there's like a,
spear tip.
Yeah, a cursed spear tip or something,
Or it swallowed something.
Or it swallowed
awful.
something, yeah.
A bit of corruption.
It's got corruption, maybe it's got, something bad is penetrated. You find one of these creatures already dead, well in advance to you finding it. Like let's say you travel through the Gale Fields to a town, and in that traveling, you find this person or this beast that is already passed. And with a little investigation,
like, it took everybody here. We finally managed to bring it down, but it killed 3 of our. Oh, whoa! Where is it still there? Yeah, its corpse is up on the North Road or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and you look at it, and maybe the mage is like, look at its teeth; they're all stained black from corruption.
Yeah,
and they're like, oh, okay,
that's
this
weird.
something
That's not normal.
Yeah, this something. This maybe this beast is drinking from a bad water supply or something like that. And so then, later down the line, when you encounter this creature, you understand what's happening. And then there is some sort of, immediately you might have some things that maybe you have like a root that sucks up corruption if it's consumed, or, there's something that, you can use as the catalyst for this puzzle that you might have already learned prior to your exploration. I think that's incredibly smart and something that the DM should be doing if they want the puzzle to be complicated in some way.
And you have
No, go ahead.
I mean, just like you have so many different levers you can pull as a DM in, say, Obojima, like, because you have witches that can, weird people that live in the woods, and they can give you all kinds of weird information about these strange things with these monsters. You have spirits that are just wandering about. Like, spirits can be a source of any kind of information or lore. You have elder spirits, which could tell you, some interesting facts or give you insight into like what the problem is. So like as you're adventuring and you're going to like say, solve like the corrupted boar, you could run into any kind of these characters that can give you sort of a backstory of like, seek this first before you, or like, oh, the boars, we know about them, this one has gone crazy for these reasons. And, it's like, then you can get the reason why this happened. Or like, in like Spirited Away, when the river spirit comes into the bathhouse, and like, how do they figure it out? Like an insightful little kid, like a young steward, like, there could be like an insightful little kid who's been out in nature watching stuff, and they come to you and they're like, hey, mister, like if you're the adventurer, and they're like, he's like, I know what's going on with the boar. And you're like, what's happened there, kid? And he's like, this happened. It's like, oh, so there's so many ways you can kind of get the information to the party about how to interact. And the party can just ignore it and say, no, we're going to go kill this boar because that's what they want to do. But
there's also like perception being used in combat just as a thing, right? So you might have characters that are not combat oriented. You might have more like investigator type characters and stuff like that, where in combat, let's say you're fighting, Smaug, they might see it, right? Yeah. So you might have it just based on passive perception. You might have somebody. One of the things I love doing is you have everyone roll perception, and then the person who just rolled the highest, they see it.
Yeah.
Right. You might have a DC to find it. So like there are things you can do, because I think the hardest thing to do is present the puzzle and have them figure out the puzzle in combat, and everything happens
right
in that moment. Sometimes it's easy. You might be able to figure it out. Like if you're all, crossing a bridge or whatever, and you have to stop them from, you could you stop howlers from attacking people. You could either kill all the howlers, or you can, below the bridge kind of, and now you've saved the town from howlers or whatever. So like there are things in the environment that could also help. But I think the hardest trick to pull off is how do you solve it in the moment of just, here's a monster, and then I need to solve that puzzle right there with no planning or no information ahead of time.
I think part of that is going to be put on the players to use their actions, which is not going to feel great for a lot of players, but use their actions to explore the environment and do some investigation on the creature in some way. And then as a DM, you're going to have to come up with some opportunities to give hints, but not necessarily give the solution right away, and then let them come to the conclusion on the solution. Unless it is overtly, like, as Ari said earlier, there's a giant dangling, glowing ball on the top of the creature's head,
Nature and insight checks are good for that.
But so what I'm curious about it, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go for
it. Is like, in combat, I have lots of options, usually. Mm-hmm. I have tons of tools at my disposal to be creative about how I fight something. Usually, if like doing the thing that is not combat to try to figure out information or something like that, it's pretty limited. I have perception, I have investigation, I might have a nature check or a history check, but it's usually like, can I remember something, or can I find something? Is there a way to make that a little bit more dynamic about if I am trying to suss out a monster, or like I know something is wrong with it, how can I do it where it's not just like, again, most traits and most abilities that you get are in D&D are combat related. Mm-hmm. So I have all of these things about how to inflict, harm, but it's limited in number and nuance oftentimes about how to do things that are along these lines, right? Is it just a perception check? Yep, you see it. Great. Or is it you perceive that something is wrong? Are there like degrees? Like in a battle, like for example, if I'm not necessarily a bruiser and I want to go down the non-combat path, I don't want to be like solved, not solved, right? Yeah. I want some amount of I'm progressing toward something. Just like in combat, I'm progressing toward victory by reducing hit points. I could see what that is. Let's say I first need to perceive something is wrong with this boar. I'm using the boar analogy. In Mononoke, it's very clear that something is wrong with that. Yeah. But they don't even know it's a boar right away. Like it has to reveal itself. So first I have to figure out, oh crap, that's not a normal thing. That demon is something weird. What is it? Oh, it's a boar. It's acting in this weird way. So like, are there ways that on my turn, I'm spending time not doing damage, which is, again, that's a hard ask for people to do, but I see progress toward something that will help either myself or the rest of my party get to a non kind of damage solution.
I was going to say, it makes me think about like giving your cat a pill. It's like, okay, I can wrap it in cheese. I can try to put a cat food. I can get the little plunger thing and try to, but it's going to spit it out. It's like,
trying different things.
Things.
I think what I would do as a DM is I would let that player do more, especially if they're using their action, do more than what D&D would normally do. So if there's like the core ways, it's like nature, insight, perception, investigation, and history are maybe the 5 core tenets of figuring Arcana. Like there's some of these things are like some of the core tenets. What I would do is if I'm like trying to do it, I would let your player, I'd say, okay, the first thing I would do is that you can ask 3 questions, like you can ask some questions for free. Then I would let the player go, okay, well, what are the things, like let me get some information. And then I would say, now you can do, I'd list the 7 or the 6 options, and I'd say pick 2 of them or 3 of them and roll those checks. And you're spending your turn like trying to understand what's going on, and you get like, oh, I get a history check, I get this. That way, if they fail their perception, they might still win their insight and their history. And they go, well, you didn't see the talisman on the back of the board that's causing it to, become demonic, but you do understand that there's maybe like a corrupt witch in the area because of your history check, and your insight check is, you can see that the boar's eyes are like, or it's drooling that's in a way that is not natural.
Or even like what you were describing, we were talking before, we were talking about diving, and Adam, you mentioned that like barracudas are attracted to shiny things.
Yeah.
So that might be a thing, like if you don't spend your time observing or like trying to figure it out, you might not make the conclusion, holy crap, it's drawn to a certain color, or it's drawn to this. It's like, or it's everybody shut up because it's drawn to speech, things like that. So but you have to spend time getting to that drawing that conclusion, which I think is really cool.
That's cool. I mean, what if it's like, you fight, there's a monster and you're like, whoa, we don't know what this thing's about. And after round 1, everybody can make a certain kind of check. And then after the second round of combat, you can make another check. And after the third, because most D&D monsters are designed for 3 rounds of combat and you're supposed to solve it by that time. But maybe by round 3, you kind of get the unlock. It's just like, but you have to survive 3 rounds of combat with this thing.
Alternatively, so it makes the people that are doing it feel special, you could say, okay, the end of the round occurred. Whoever has the reaction left over, you can make a check right now. So that way it's the people that are really combat focused, and use the reaction. Min-maxing. They're doing, so the people that have been more reserved might be able to get this opportunity to feel more useful.
That's cool.
That's another interesting way of doing it. As a DM on your end, you're just going to have to be ready to pump out some lore and information that helps guide your player towards the puzzle that you're trying to have them solve.
So here's a question. So there are different action types in the game, and help is one of those actions. Is there this is not good, but is there an observe action, which is the most passive thing? It seems what I'm saying. Is there a cool version of that? Is there a dynamic thing where actually I'm going to get rewarded in some way to do this? Now, the downside is that you might observe, and the DM, it might put a lot on the DM and be like, what do you observe? I don't know. What they observe. You observe that this thing has 2 tentacles. Yeah, we already know it has 2 tentacles or whatever. So that might be more of a burden. But if you are playing this puzzly type thing, I think a lot of it comes down to training your players about the type of campaign you're playing in. Types of encounters you're going to have are usually going to have some sort of mechanism or some sort of alternative to beating it to death.
It's just how D&D functions.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of training on your player's end and on your DM side. It's just, if you're going to run a monster as a puzzle, not every monster has to be, but when you choose to do it, I think it just requires a little bit of extra planning on your end and being prepared to answer those questions, because players are going to naturally want to ask them.
Yeah.
And it could also be as we design monsters in Obojima going forward, maybe we just start writing in that stuff into a stat block. It's just hey, here's a puzzle thing about it.
Yeah.
And it's just because
options.
We're designing the game that way, you can still beat everything to death in Obojima with your club. That's great. You can do that. But, because we're trying to create a different way of interacting, playing D&D, we can do that in the stat block.
We've already done that a little bit in some of our stat blocks, adding aversions, monsters having aversions.
It has already begun.
It's starting.
Yeah.
That said, we're already well after our time period here.
Curses.
So I'm going to end the quest now. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully some of this information was helpful or useful. If you want to hear more about this or want a section about monsters as puzzles in an upcoming book, let us know.
Or if you have suggestions.
We'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
You can check us out on Discord, Instagram, Reddit, TikTok, all of those places. You can find us on D&D Beyond. You can find us on our website. And you can check out the new upcoming Kickstarter, which is probably live right now, or maybe it's coming out soon. I'm not sure. But check the links below and you will find it there. Thank you so much, and we will catch you next time.